So let's start. So my name is Sanjeev Sharma. I have a who am I slide. That's me. That's my Twitter ID at the bottom there. I write a blog primarily in the space of DevOps, which is my day job, and mobile, which is my other day job. So those are the two areas where I blog about and write about, and I've been speaking at these conferences for the last couple of times. This is, I think, my third ModevUX conference I'm speaking at, but I've been primarily speaking in the area of DevOps for mobile for the last couple of times. So this time I decided to change tracks and talk about UX because that's the focus here. So how many people here are developers? Okay, around a third of the room. How many people are UX folks? Okay, what about the rest? Both? People do both? Excellent. So the goal of this talk, as its title suggests, is enterprise mobile app UX. So enterprise apps are inherently different. And as you can see from this logo at the right, I work for IBM. So given the kind of customers we as IBM have, and IBM has, anybody can be a customer. In fact, we have a great mobile IDE. We purchased a company last year called Worklight. They have an excellent IDE for developing native apps and hybrid apps. So you can be on a Windows box making iOS apps using that IDE. It's called Worklight Studio. It's free. You can go to Eclipse Marketplace, download it, use it, and you can make native apps for any platform and make hybrid apps using PhoneGap, Cordova, or Dojo, or Sencha, all in one IDE. So no longer having 3 IDEs or 4 IDEs on your machine. But that was a brief commercial break. So, and I have another commercial break later on. But the typical customers I deal with as a solution architect are enterprises, large enterprises, right? Like the kind whose apps you've probably encountered because you deal with these companies, banks, financial institutions, airlines, and so on and so forth. And as enterprises, one of the things, and the obligatory mobile UX slide, this is all the elements of UX. I'm going to focus on a couple of these areas, but over the day today, I'm sure as you attend sessions today and tomorrow, somebody will be touching on all of these, right? UX is not UI. UI is just the interface by which you experience UX. So although I have UI components in my talk, the idea is that because if you're making an enterprise application, you are not making a standalone app which runs on your device only, like Angry Birds, or this one is my latest, or actually my kid's latest favorite, Bad Piggies. They run on your device. You can be offline. You don't have to have any internet connection. The only internet connection these apps have is to Game Center to track scores, and to, if you're stingy like me and don't buy the paid version, for the advertisements which come on it. That's the only communication these apps have off your device. Everything else is on your device. But if you're building an enterprise application, then it's all about the backends, right? Your application, your enterprise application, backends of different sizes, shapes, and colors, but your application is nothing but a front end, a facade for all the complex backend services your enterprise has. If you are a bank, anybody here with a bank? Okay. Yeah, Capital One is a sponsor. Yeah. If you're a bank, then it's commercial banking services, retail banking services, wealth management services, identity services, bank transfer services, wire services. Pick up any banking application and you can look at it, right? I was flying yesterday, so I was interacting with my United Airlines application. App on my device, right? I could check schedule of my flight, which was late thanks to the thunderstorms here. It was bright and sunny where I was, but there was an airport shutdown, so they have a separate app in the app, a capability in the app for me to check the status of my flight. They had a capability in the app for me to purchase a day pass for the lounge if I wanted to splurge and go sit in the luxurious lounge they have over there. They had an app to tell me what my next flight is, where it is. There was another app which, and I'm calling these apps, but these are capabilities within the app, right? These are probably all different systems in United Airlines Enterprise. There was one which showed a seat map and told me where I was on the first class upgrade waiting list, which wasn't very helpful because it was a small plane with no first class. So, so I was number 1 on the list, but You could move me to the co-pilot seat. You know, and the backend, I as an app user don't care what the backend is. It could be a third-party service, not even hosted by the enterprise. It could be a mainframe application. If you're a bank, it is most likely a mainframe application, because more systems of record are on mainframes than anything else, any other kind of environment in the world. It could be a data warehouse where all I'm doing is getting some metrics, right? This flight is late 7 out of 9 times, 7 out of 10 times, right? This is a track record. There's some data warehouse somewhere which had that information, which told me what the track record of that flight was. So it is nothing but what is known as a system of interaction, a method of interaction to interact with the system of engagements in my backend or the systems of records in my backend. And that's the thesis of my talk. I could be done now. Is your user experience, your UX, when it comes to a mobile application for an enterprise, is to give you an experience of how you interact with your backend systems. It is not to experience how cool your UI is. And if the way you interact with your backend sucks, for lack of a better term, then it doesn't matter how cool your UI is or what technology you used and whether it's responsive or this and that. It all doesn't matter. Because if I have to do 27 clicks to transfer money from one account to the other one, I'm not liking your app. I'm not having a good user experience. The second challenge is fragmented platforms. The user experience is different, right? On iOS apps, I have to put the back button in the app. If it's a mobile web app, the back button is the browser's back button. If it's a Android app, then the back button is a hardware button on my screen, right? It's not in my UI. It's provided by the device. If it's a BlackBerry, I don't know what they do. If it's Windows, everybody's still trying to figure out the gestures, right? So I don't know, right? I mean, how do I have a consistent user experience if I'm building for all these fragmented platforms? So what that results in is an application architecture which looks something like this. And this is my favorite example, not because it is great. It actually is pretty good, but because everybody uses this. Who all have a LinkedIn profile or have ever used LinkedIn? What about the rest of you? Not looking for jobs? That's all I get from LinkedIn is, you know, hi, I found your expertise. No. Let's not go there. And what they did is they built a UI, a mobile application. Actually, they built 4. And this is, all my URLs are there. The slides will be posted on my blog, bit.ly/SD architect, all lowercase for software development architect. I'll post them tonight. They built an iOS app, which is a hybrid app. It has HTML and JavaScript components and some native components. They built an Android app, which was all native because they were having performance issues with the Android web view, which is well known. They built a mobile web, so m.linkedin.com, and I'll show you some screenshots of the comparison. And they built other Java HTML wrappers for other platforms, right? Bada, Nokia, whatever the case might be. And what they did was they treat the backend, all the systems they have. Think of all the systems you have on LinkedIn. You have your profile. Everybody has a profile. That's what we all do first, right? Then you have your connections, right? People, how you connect with other people, the Facebook side of LinkedIn. Then you have your groups, LinkedIn groups, right? Where you can chat people, post job postings, which is the commonest thing going on in LinkedIn. Then there is the employer portal, right? Where the employers can go and put in job postings. And there's a couple of other things. They send me some new link about LinkedIn contacts. And then there is the advertising. All of those are separate systems, and there might be more, I don't know. But the mobile app treats them all as a backend, as a black box, and they built a platform on top of it by creating a REST API interface by which their mobile app, and for that matter even their web app, can interact. And they put an app server in the middle. They built their own. IBM sells one called Worklight, another commercial break. They built their own using Node.js and MongoDB. So to the mobile app, they decoupled it from the backend systems, and instead of having n backend systems, now the mobile app sees one big black box with an API on top of it. This is an ideal way to solve both the problems of mobile fragmentation and having multiple backend systems you need to interact with. So given this as an example, I see there as being 3 architectural decisions you as an enterprise app developer need to make in order to have good UX. First one is choosing your UI technology. What technology you're going to use, right? And we'll talk about it. Second is, how do you interact with your backend architecture? And the third one is, how do you determine your UX flow, the flow of your user experience, so that it matches the flow of how your customers will interact with your backend systems, because that's all your application is for. So let's take all three of these. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? I don't want to rush. Yes, you look like you had a question, so it prompted me to ask. That's my next slide. What a segue. I'll pay you later. I'll pay you later. There are cookies upstairs. I'll get you one. This is a decision which needs to be taken. Which way will you go? HTML5, which would be your mobile web, M dot, whatever, a native application, or a hybrid application. Which way will you go? And there are many reasons, and there is no right answer. There is the religious reason, which I have not pointed out here, where it becomes a religious war saying native is the way to go. We will not look at hybrid. And nobody wants to talk about it because that's the way the company has decided. And I work with a local company which has gone that way, and you can't talk to them about hybrid. They're like, hybrid doesn't work. What do you mean it doesn't work? Oh, Cordova is too slow. What? Come on, man. At least have a conversation. Give me a reason, right? You can't say it doesn't work. There are hundreds of thousands of applications which are hybrid. So you have to give a reason, right? So, but that answer depends upon your needs. And here are some of the factors you need to consider while deciding it. And for whatever reason, I actually saw that, but I've not read the whole blog post on why LinkedIn dished HTML5 for iOS. But these are the factors I typically see. Number one, the reason why somebody goes for hybrid is, or goes for native is, they really want it to be a native experience. The problem with going with mobile web is that it looks like mobile web. If you are okay with that, and I'll show you an example. This is LinkedIn apps. This is me going to my LinkedIn profile page, whatever, on my native app on my iPhone. This is me at that very moment, then typing in m.linkedin.com, and I went from 1 message to 7. I did it right then. They were waiting for me. See, my percentage of the battery is exactly the same. These were taken instantaneously. And it went from 1 message to 7. I mean, some recruiter found me. Right? And say 10 people have new. It's the same darn thing, but I don't know what happened to the messages. What's the difference? The only difference is this toolbar at the bottom, because this is my mobile Safari. So Safari puts this, I have 2 tabs open. I can bookmark, yada, yada, yada. Other than that, it looks and feels the same. So in this scenario, the only reason you would go native is performance, because with hybrid, performance becomes an issue. Because style guide in that example is not an issue, it looks the same. But style guide might be an issue, which helps you decide whether you want to go with native or hybrid, or native, you can make it look like a native app. With hybrid, you have to work to make it look like a native app, and you'll have to fork it anyway and have an Android native app and a iOS native app and a BlackBerry native app and a Windows native app to make it look like them, because they're all different. So common code will still need to be branched no matter what you do if you're making hybrid apps. So so you decide how much branching is needed. Why not I start from 0 and just have the business logic be the same and all my UI be totally branched, or I go as far as possible with Cordova and then branch at the end. Performance of Cordova is an issue, right? It is. Nobody can challenge it. A native app will always be faster. Hardware SDKs always require native. So if you're building a device where the smart pen, the Samsung pen, you want to use that. You can't build a hybrid app and make it do that. You have to, you can, hybrid Cordova now supports cameras and the generic stuff which every device has. But if you're using very device specific hardware like the pen or NFC, which is Android only, you have to go native. You can't use. Yeah. Second is data connectivity. Hybrid apps will not work offline. Now you might say, LinkedIn, there's nothing I can do offline anyway, right? My United app, what will I do offline? I can't check status if I'm offline, if there's no data. I'm staring at my reservation. That's all I can do. So there is no added reason for me to go not hybrid or HTML5. If without data connectivity, my app is pointless. If I'm making bad Piggies, it is designed for offline use. The only thing I don't get is those pesky advertisements, which is fine by me, right? I'm not paying 99 cents. Cheap. So these are some of the decisions. This is not a complete list, but these are some of the decisions. And I think there's a session today or tomorrow on helping you make this decision, and they'll probably go much more in depth. I already said that. Secondly is know thy audience, right? If you're making a global app, there are more BlackBerries than iPhones in the world, even today. If you go to Asia and Africa, you'll see many more BlackBerries than you will see Android apps or iPhones app. Android is catching up. You'll very rare. An Android app, $600, translate that into rupees or dongs or whatever currency there's there. That's a lot of dough, right? Second one, do you want to make money? Is this a paid app? You're not going to make money on Android. Of all the money made in app world, less than 10% is made on Android. So if you're trying to bet your college tuition on Android or your kids' college tuition, it ain't happening. Cultural content. This was actually attended a session a couple of weeks ago. It was in the Reagan building downtown, and it was all museum folks and all talking about the same topic. And so very interesting stat there. Cultural content. So if you are culturally inclined, you probably have an iPhone. Almost 100% of cultural content is consumed on iPhone, and they're tracking this in the Smithsonian, where the hits come from. Yes. It's a user mindset. People on Android don't like paying. Google it, you'll find tons of analysis on why, but it's a mindset. It's the same guys who have Cydia on their iPhone also, but they don't like paying. I have no explanation. How many people here have Androids? Ask them. I don't have an Android device, so I get the free version of the apps. So any questions on UI choices? Again, this is just one of the 3 decisions, so I need to get going. But any questions? This is the most important part, right? Which is, how do you separate that? And the LinkedIn example answered this, right? You put a layer in between. You put a magical API or an app server in between, separating your backend systems to your mobile or web apps. So all your backend enterprise systems talk to that app server. The app server is a consumer, and all your mobile apps talk to the app server. They are the consumer. That way, things change down here in the backend systems. The mobile apps are minimally impacted. And if you are rapidly changing your mobile app, your backend systems are minimally impacted that way. So build a platform, whether you use an app server like Worklight or I think App47 guys have something like this also. Quite a few out there. Or you just build an API. Use Mashery or Cast Iron from IBM and build an API for your backend systems, and then your mobile apps just talk to the API. You can separate your UI from the backend, just like LinkedIn did by putting in that mobile server in the middle. This will allow you to separate it, but it also brings me to the third decision, which is your user interface flow. Remember, the mobile UX is backend UX for an enterprise app. It's all about how I'm interacting with my backend systems. As I mentioned before, if I go to my United app and I have to drill down 37 clicks to get flight status, I'm deleting the app. I'll find some other way to get my flight status, right? Like look at the screen in the airport. But I'm not going to use it. That's how it matters. So how do you do that? You match your user interaction by creating flowcharts, or in this case, a BPM and workflow of how your user will be interacting with the backend systems, because that will determine good UX. So this flow up here is nothing but a flow of a user interacting with your backend services. This will help you design your UI flow better. It will help you design your user experience better. This is the most important slide. Everything I said today is to lead to this slide, because your user experience is nothing, if we're in a mobile application, in an enterprise mobile application, is nothing but the user experience of your user interacting with the services your enterprise provides to the user. That's all they do. And user can be an employee. This whole B2E market is really big, business to enterprise, right? Because all, Salesforce.com enabled things or the CRM systems, they all want them to be on the device. I mean, I can interact with my IBM internal network right from a device with our internal communities, with our internal chat systems. These are B2 business to employee apps, right? And more companies are creating those. So it doesn't have to be external users. By user, it could be an employee. It could be a business partner. It could be a vendor, or it could be a customer of your company. But so the place to start for good user experience in a mobile app is look at all the use cases which your users do with your backend system, which you want them to be able to perform using a mobile application. Those use cases will map and create the flow through your user experience. The next thing you need to decide with that is choose a UI architecture. And there's a very great architecture diagram or article, blog post on this website, UX Booth. Very nice. It talks about different methods of creating your UI flow, depending on the kind of application interaction you have. The most typical one we've seen is tabs, right? Tabs are great if your user flow allows for multitasking. I'm on Twitter. I want to see if somebody mentioned me. At the same time, I want to post. Then I want to see my list and do a search. What am I doing? I'm multitasking between the 4 different applications or system services which Twitter provides. So that's multitasking. If you look at this one, this is LinkedIn's architecture. If you go into LinkedIn, what do you see? You see 4 windows. And each one of those, or if you clicked on the LinkedIn button, it brings up 4 windows, which are the 4 main systems which we interact with LinkedIn. So they have this, there's names for all of these. I forgot to write them. This one is called Bento Box. That's the only one I remember. This one is called Nested Doll. But these are different flows you can create for UI based on what? Based on how it is supposed to interact with your backend. Is it simple use cases? Do you allow user? Yes, sir. Question. They're all broken. Trust me. Why? And let me answer that. Because backend systems in most companies are siloed, right? But the mobile experience, you don't want it to be siloed. You want it to flow evenly. You want it to flow smoothly. I mean, there's a bank I have accounts with, and I cannot switch from one account to the other without logging in again. Why? Because it is actually 3 banks which got acquired recently, and they just glued a front end to the 3 backend apps. But there's no way for me to go from one to the other or transfer money. I cannot pay my credit card without logging in again. Although the credit card and my checking account are for the same bank. I will not name it, but if you work for that company, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And you are in this room. Yeah, but it's true for every bank. Why? They go around buying banks like I buy shirts, right? I mean, they're just buying and they have to glop all these together, right? I mean, I work for IBM. We buy a company a month. What do we have to do? Glop all these together, right? So yes, it's work. That's why this step of creating those use cases is the most important step you will ever take. Yes. The API layer is still needed, but how do you interact? Right? That API layer is probably there in the bank also, but the bank systems are different with different logins and passwords. So the checking account requires a different login and password because it was a different bank at one time than their credit card, which was a different company at one time. And they haven't done the authentication systems, glued them together yet. So these user experiences are very important. I mean, I can't wait to see what will, we saw that happen. I mean, I travel a lot, so with United and Continental, right? When they merged, right? For the back-end United systems, everything became Continental. Actually, they just jacked up United, slid Continental under it, and wrote United on top. But the app, they kept the United app. So it was very interesting to see how that app evolved. And I wish I had documented it. I should have done some series of blog posts, but I didn't know it'll be so interesting. It's the problem with history. You don't know it's something worth documenting when you're in the middle of it. All I was doing was cursing the app and then going, shouldn't I be documenting this? I'm learning. I could learn something and do a better UX talk. So, yes, but that is very important because you will see very complex backend systems which are not designed. Now, the fact that companies have websites which allow you to do the same thing, hopefully the web people who went before you did some work to clean it up and documented some of the use cases for you. The mobile use cases will be different. Please do not just translate those, but at least some of the work has been done. So now another brief word from our sponsors. One of the issues, my sponsors, they're not sponsoring this event, is how do you test this? How do you test your user interface? So this has been a big area of a gap in the whole mobile development space, and IBM actually just announced last week a mobile UI testing tool that does record and playback of mobile for doing functional testing. Now, it's not going to test your user experience, but you can test the user flow and your use cases. So you can write your use cases, your scenarios, and then you can record and play it back to validate that your application is working as designed. Now, if you have a bad use case and bad UX flow, it's going to test and tell you it works good, but it's still bad. But you have to be the judge. The human has to be the judge of what is good UX versus bad UX. The device, a testing tool can only tell you whether the UI works as designed or not. So to end, I don't know if Steph Hayes is speaking at this event or not, but she's a co-founder of a local company called Fast Customer, and she writes a UX blog. Great blog. Please check it out. StephanieHay.com is the link there. And I love these two quotes, right? One of them, she says, is when the moment you start interacting with an app, the first experience is, the question you ask is, what the crap is this? Why am I here? And is it worth my time? That is the first question your user interface should answer, because the user experience of the user starts at that first contact. If the person looks at it and goes, what do I do now? You lost them. You lost them. I don't care how well it flows. I don't care how cool it is. I don't care how many good use cases you thought up, how fast it is. It doesn't matter if you lose them at the first minute. And there are so many apps, you pop up the app and you go, huh? What is this all about? And then the final quote, right? And she's talking about her, right? The goal of UX is to clarify content, so users don't wonder what this means. And this can be the visual end of it, and it can be both. It is relevant both for the visual end and both for the experience end. Users shouldn't be wondering, why do I have to go through 15 windows to transfer my own money? Users shouldn't be wondering, why can't I pay my my credit card with my checking account? They're both with the same bank. That's bad user experience, right? And these are the questions you need to answer. And that is my talk. Any questions? Yes, sir.
When is that raffle? Is that already out?
It's in beta. You can go online, register for the beta. Send me a note if you have any trouble doing that. Yeah. Yes.
This actually relates, my question relates to that slide you had with the UI flow mapping to the backend flow. And what's been your experience, or do you have any advice for trying to get both your design team and your backend team, so your UI team is usually a separate team, and your backend team, which is usually another separate team, for trying to get them in the same room and realizing that they should both be feeding off each other instead of waiting for one.
So as I mentioned earlier on, my primary job, my day job is in the DevOps space. So DevOps. So you should create a Dev UI flow, whatever, join all the acronyms together and have that experience that there shouldn't be separate teams. Yes, hierarchically and HR-wise, there can be separate teams, but this is a joint experience, right? It's like a battle plan, right? Where, the Marines are coming in, throwing bombs, and the Navy is sending in their warships, and, but it's one command and control center. So the program manager or product manager needs to be the person who coordinates all of these. And it cannot be, oh, I got to go through 15 layers of management to get to that director who owns all three teams to be able to talk to them team. Those barriers need to be broken down. Otherwise, this is not happening. Those walls between the teams have to be broken. It has to be one effort, one project, and I don't care which team you belong to or who you report to, right? This is something we are building together. Yes, sir. Please. Like this.
Yeah, so that's not something in the tool for
Yep. Yep. So this, yeah, this definitely will make your life easier, right? Because you don't have to make the backend flow the way you want it to. You have to make the flow possible. So think of it going, right? Okay, these are the 5 systems or services my company provides. How do I, as a user, interact with those? And make that interaction and flow between those interactions simpler in my mobile app. Then figure out, using this middleware layer, how you can make the communication to the backend happen. Right? And maybe I should edit this slide to show that there is a middle layer in there, which will make, I think, join the 2 points better. So thank you. Was there another question? Okay, we're done. If you have any questions, I'll hang out in the back, and I'm around for the next 3 days. I'm even here for the hackathon, so stop me or send me a tweet. Thank you, everybody.